What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Life's a Dance podcast. I am your host, Trey Culata. Thank you, as always, for pressing play and supporting the channel because I am on a mission to detangle and demystify that crazy thing that we call the human mind so that we can live our most authentic lives and be our most authentic selves and live up to our fullest potentials. So today we are talking about the entrepreneur's journey. And because here's the thing or I guess it's the myth about the entrepreneur's journey. We're going to debunk all this shit because what happens is everybody out there, so many of us are like, hey, I want to start a company. I want to start a business. I want to do my own thing. And you're so excited about it. But then once you start getting into it, you don't really realize all of the things that are required. And a lot of people don't really understand what they're signing up for. So I wanted to take a moment to get into this because I am at a point in my entrepreneurial journey where I feel like I'm kind of in the dip, right? And if we can get through the valley, and eventually we will get to that uptick. But I'll get into all that in a second because I think it was really well put by a really famous influencer and entrepreneur, Alex Hormozi. And there's a graphic that I'm going to post on the screen here so that you guys can see it. But I think it really demonstrates so succinctly the different phases of being an entrepreneur or becoming an entrepreneur. So the first stage number 1 is uninformed optimism. So you have this idea, you want to start this business, you're super excited, but you have no idea the challenges that you may or may not face. And I know that, me and my business partner going into this tiny cabin real estate thing, in the beginning, we're all pumped. We've got some money in the bank. We're doing the things. We think we've got a budget, outlined and think we have an idea of what it's going to cost. And boy, were we fucking wrong. So that takes us to our next step, which is informed pessimism. So with informed pessimism, as you start to, get into doing your business, you realize, oh shit, there's logistics. Oh, I got to save for taxes. Oh shit, I lost a team member. Or, in our case, we were running into all kinds of issues in terms of our timelines and the winter months hitting in the mountains delayed our construction a long time, 4 to 6 months. So, these are the things that we did not plan for. And in the middle of it all, we're sitting there paying money towards loans that we took out to finance our project. And we're freaking out because we're essentially paying money for nothing because the project is at a fucking standstill. So this takes us to our next portion of the cycle, which is crisis of meaning. And in the crisis of meaning stage, you start to question whether or not you should have done this in the first place. And you have feelings of giving up. And you have feelings of, imposter syndrome and, unworthiness and, feeling like a failure or like you are going to fail. And I think a few months ago, maybe even a couple months ago, that's where I was at. And, I'm still kind of working through that crux and that part of the curve. Because if you decide not to keep going, you hit a portion of the cycle that's called crash and burn. You don't proceed to the next levels, right? You just crash, fail, that's it, kaput, the end. But if you can see it through, and somehow, some way, my partner and I have just managed to keep our eye on the prize, even though we don't necessarily know the exact numbers, which is stupid, I guess, on our part, as to how this property may perform once it's all said and done. We still have faith and leaned on each other. And now we're getting to the informed optimism phase. So informed optimism comes from having gone through all the bullshit that we previously went through, trying to find contractors, trying to finance the project, trying to line everything up and sync it up to where we would have the most effective construction process possible in our case. We ran into so many problems that we were forced to figure them out, right? We had to come up with solutions. There was no other alternative, especially because we're both into this for hundreds of thousands of dollars. So that said, now we have the knowledge and we have the experience to feel confident in our decisions going into the next project. So in my opinion, we are somewhere between the crisis of meaning and we're coming out of that phase and we're going into the informed optimism phase, because now we can finally see that finish line of project number 1. We've got our refinance going, we're pre-approved for a loan that's going to cover all of our expenses and consolidate everything into one big pie. Because right now we got debt all over the place, just full disclosure. And then after that, we go on to, after the informed optimism phase, we go on to achievement. So we achieve the thing. And we're so fucking close, guys. We're so fucking close. And I just felt like this was such an important conversation to have because of where I'm at right now in my own entrepreneurial journey, because I have gone through so many phases or cycles like this where I went to uninformed optimism. Like I had this cannabis jobs board idea that I thought was going to really be a fucking smash hit. And, I just went into it blind. I built the website. I got all the things ready to go. Everything looked great, but then there was like no traffic. And silly me, I bailed on that project after I think it was 2 years without getting any traction. And right before the pandemic hit, which is when everybody lost their jobs and would have been looking for jobs. And there was a point where the site was ranking number 1 on Google search for cannabis jobs. So maybe if I had stuck it out and gotten through like these other phases of informed pessimism and the crisis of meaning, like, should I even be doing this? Am I wasting my fucking time? But instead, I decided to just let it go, and I crashed and burned. And that's just one example. But if this happens to you, or if it has happened to you in the past, I don't want that to deter you from continuing to try, because the worst thing you can do is get to the end of your life and you'll always regret not trying. The regret of actually doing the thing and the feeling of failure is way better than the regret of not even having tried, because then at least you know the answer. Otherwise, it's just going to always be a big question mark. And for those of us who can get through that valley of crisis of meaning and into the informed optimism phase, which is where me and my partner are heading, hallelujah, praise Jesus, then you get to experience the overwhelming excitement of that achievement and the pride in achievement. And I think that this is going to be, I'm getting chills now just talking about it, the first time in my life where I really feel like it's a fucking slam dunk. Out of all the things that I have attempted to do in my life, I've finally gotten to a point where I feel like this is it. This is the thing. And I'm doing it. And maybe it's a little bit messy and a little cattywampus, but I equate it to, and I mean, a lot of my listeners out there may not have children, but having a baby. So the first little baby takes forever to come out, and then the second baby pops out like a watermelon seed. So I think that with some iteration, it's going to get cleaner, it's going to get easier, and we'll do it all over again. So, and that's the beauty of it, is right now I have the time, and hopefully you do too. Like, you're at a point in your life where you still have time to make shit happen. So don't be afraid to dive into this curve and just be aware of the different phases of this cycle So that when you do hit these different phases, you know that that's all it is. It's just a phase. It's just a phase. It will pass, and you will be so much more confident and better off if you can just stick it out to the end. Okay? That's going to do it for today, guys. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave them in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening, follow me on my socials at Trey Culata. You can always DM me there. And if you got anything out of this episode, if anything about this episode resonated with you, please, I would encourage you and invite you to share it with somebody else that's like-minded, because it might help them on their journey as well. So until next time, guys, that's going to do it. I love you all. Let's dance.